Yo, what is going on, guys? It is your boy J Red back at it again with another bracket video. Now, today I am going to be doing something very interesting. I'm calling it the Better Record Bracket. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to this little eye, and if you click on it, it actually shows the records unless it shows these two teams right here that have to play. And I already looked it up. North Dakota State and NC Central already have a record of 18-15. But that's besides the point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each one, click on the eye, and whoever has the better record, I'm simply going to click on the better record, and they move on. So I think it's a pretty interesting idea. And for the ones that have two teams on there, I'm going to pause the video and look up the record and then come back to it, so that way I know for sure that I'm double checking my sources. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. First one's Duke, obviously. Next up, VCU has a 25-7 record, and UCF has a 23-8 record. Very close to each other, but VCU moves on. Next up, Mississippi State and Liberty. Mississippi State has a 23-10 record, while Liberty comes in with 28-6. So Liberty gets the nod there. Next up, Virginia Tech and St. Louis. Virginia Tech has a 24-8 record. St. Louis has a 23-12 record. So Virginia Tech gets the nod there. Next up, Maryland and Belmont. Maryland has a 22-10 record. I'm going to go check Belmont and Temple's records real quick, so I'll be right back. Alright, so now I just looked up. Maryland obviously has a 23-10 record, as you guys can tell. 22-10 actually. Belmont has a 26-5 record, I do believe. Right there, 26-5. And Temple has a 23-9 record. So either way, Belmont and Temple, whoever wins that game, they move on in this bracket. Next up, LSU and Yale. LSU has a 26-6 record, but Yale has 22-7. So close, Yale. So close. But LSU moves on. Next up, Minnesota and Louisville. Ooh, 20-13, 21-13. Minnesota has one more game above Louisville, so Minnesota gets the nod there. Michigan State and Bradley. Michigan State has a 27-6 record. Bradley has 20-14. So Michigan State moves on to the next round. In this bracket, anyway. Next up, Gonzaga and FDU and PV. Gonzaga is a 30-3 record team. I'm going to go check the records on Prairie View and I think Fairlawn Dickinson. And guys, it really didn't matter, honestly, because Prairie View and Fairlawn Dickinson both had worse records than Gonzaga. So I could just exit out of these, because Gonzaga is moving on. Next up, Syracuse and Baylor. Ooh, Syracuse barely nodded out with a 20-13 record against over Baylor, who has a record of 19-13. Syracuse moves on. Next up, Marquette and Murray State. I mean, it's pretty obvious Murray State has a better record, so they get the nod. Next up, Vermont and Florida State. Ooh, they both have both won the same amount of games, but Vermont has lost one less game, so that qualifies as a better record. Vermont moves on. Buffalo, Arizona State, and St. John's. Buffalo coming in with a 31-3 record. Let me check the records on Arizona State and St. John's real quick. Like I said, I just have to make sure that I'm doing this correctly, so that way I'm not doing it wrong. Buffalo has the better record out of both of those teams anyway. Next up, Northern Kentucky and Texas Tech. Texas Tech is a 26-6 record. Northern Kentucky 26-8. So that means Texas Tech is moving on. Next up, Nevada and Florida. Nevada 29-4. Florida 19-15. So Nevada moves on. Next up, Michigan and Montana. Michigan 28-5. Montana 26-8. So Michigan moves on. All right, going up to the other side of the bracket. Virginia and Gardner-Webb. Obviously, Virginia moves on because they have a way better record than Gardner-Webb. Next up, Ole Miss and Oklahoma. Ooh, Ole Miss barely notches it out with 20 wins. Oklahoma has 19. Next up, Wisconsin and Oregon. Wisconsin, 23 wins, 10 losses. Oregon, 23 wins, 12 losses. So that makes Wisconsin the better team. Next up, Kansas State and UC Irvine. Ooh, UC Irvine with that 30-5 record. Kansas State coming in at 25-8. So that means UC Irvine moving on. Next up, Villanova, St. Mary's. I mean, it's pretty obvious there. Villanova has the better record. Next up, Old Dominion and Purdue. Ooh, Old Dominion 26-8 with Purdue 23-9. So that means Old Dominion moves on. Next up, Cincinnati and Iowa. Cincinnati 28-6, Iowa 22-11. So Cincinnati moves on. And I don't need to check this. I saw that one coming. Tennessee with the better record. No shocker there. All right, here we go. North Carolina, Iona. And no surprise there, North Carolina has the way better record. Utah State and Washington. And Utah State gets the nod with 28 wins, 6 losses. Next up, New Mexico State, Auburn. Yep, that's pretty obvious. New Mexico State has a way better record. Next up, Northeastern and Kansas. Northeastern with 23 wins, 10 losses, but Kansas has 25 wins, 9 losses. So Kansas gets the nod there. They move on. Oh, new subscriber. Thank you, Anjanil Coma. Welcome to the nation. Thank you for subscribing. Next up, Iowa State and Ohio State. Iowa State's got a 23-11 record, and Ohio State has 19-14. Don't know why my camera was not focusing there for a second. So that means Iowa State moves on. Houston for Georgia State. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I have to do this to make sure that I'm doing this right. Next up, Wofford and Seton Hall. Yep, it's Wofford. So Wofford moves on. Here we go. Ooh, this is a toughie. UK with 27 wins and 6 losses, and Alabama Christian with 27 wins, 6 losses. So, in the event of a tiebreaker, we have to go to these stats. So, we're not counting RPI. Opponent points per game, Alabama's got the go-ahead. In the BPI, Kentucky's got that. Conference, Kentucky is ahead. Points per game, Kentucky's ahead. Last 12 games, Kentucky is ahead. So, that means, due to the tiebreaker, Kentucky moves on because of the more stats that were on there. Next up, VCU and Duke. And Duke has the better record. Moving on. Liberty and Virginia Tech. And it is Liberty that is moving on to face Duke. Next up, Belmont and Temple versus LSU. LSU with 26-6. I probably should have kept Belmont and Temple's records up again. I'm going to have to go check again. I'll be right back. Alright, so LSU has a 26-6 record, but Belmont actually has the better record. So, based off of that, we have to go with Belmont because they have a better record. Next up, Minnesota and Michigan State. We have Michigan State moving on. And let's see. Great video and good reaction. Really loved it, my guy. Alright, thank you, Angelina Coma. I will be sure to react to your comment after I finish this video. But thank you for commenting on that. Alright, next up, Gonzaga and Syracuse. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Yep, Gonzaga. Moving on. Next up, Vermont and Murray State. Yep, Murray State. Yep, they got the better record right there. Almost picked Vermont. Whoops, that would have been embarrassing. Buffalo and Texas Tech. Yep, Buffalo moves on. Next up, Nevada and Michigan. Ooh, that is close, but Nevada moves on. Next up, Virginia and Ole Miss. I don't need to check it, but have to do it for credibility. And Virginia moves on. Next up, Wisconsin, UC Irvine. And UC Irvine is moving on. Next up, Villanova and Old Dominion. And it is Old Dominion with the better record, not by much. Next up, Cincinnati and Tennessee. Like I said, got to check for credibility, and it is Tennessee with one more win and one less loss. So Tennessee moves on. Next up, North Carolina and Utah State. Oh, Utah State by one game. That's crazy. And Utah State, because of that, moves on. Next up, New Mexico State and Kansas. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's New Mexico State. Next up, Iowa State and Houston. I mean, I don't need to check this, but like I said, credibility, it's Houston. Next up, Kentucky and Wofford. I know it's going to be Wofford, and I was right. It is Wofford. They move on because of the better record. Next up, we have Duke and Liberty. And surprisingly, oh, wow. Duke moves on. I thought Liberty had the better record for a second. It is Duke. And now, Michigan State at 27-6. I have to go back. Belmont has a 26-5 record. They have one less win, but one less loss than Michigan State. Ooh. Just due to the fact that Michigan State is better, has one more win, I'm going to have to give it to them. I can't really know what else to do there. And next up, it is Gonzaga with the better record. Next up, Buffalo and Nevada. Ooh, Buffalo moves on, surprisingly. I'm not saying that in a bad way, just kind of shocked there. Next up, Virginia and UC Irvine. 30-5, but 29-3. Ooh. Since Virginia has way less losses, I'm going to have to give it to Virginia there. Next up, Tennessee and Old Dominion. And it is Tennessee. Next up, Utah State and New Mexico State. And I believe it is New Mexico State. And it is Houston moving on. There we go. Elite Eight time. Duke, Michigan State, Virginia, and Tennessee on that side. Duke and Michigan State, who has the better record. And it is Duke. For Virginia and Tennessee, it is Virginia that has the better record. Next up, Buffalo and Gonzaga. And, ooh, Buffalo has one more win. It is Buffalo. And Houston and New Mexico State. Oh, Houston has one more win and one less loss. So Houston moves on. Final four, Duke, Buffalo, Virginia, and Houston, which wouldn't be far stretched if you really think about it. Duke and Buffalo, Buffalo has the better record. They are in the championship, and going into there, it is going to be Houston. Buffalo and Houston. And look at that. We are at a tiebreaker once again. So we're going to have to decide this by the stats. So looking at the stats, RPI rank, it doesn't really matter. Opponent points per game, Houston has got the advantage on that. BPI ranking, Houston's got the advantage on that. Conference play, they are both tied. Houston still has advantage. Points per game. Ooh, so we have 1, 2. There's a tie. Buffalo has 1 and another tie. So Houston, despite that, is your national champions. And the score, I think it'd be high scoring. So let's go 70 to 65. There we go. And there we go. Houston, in my better record bracket, is projected to win. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this other wacky bracket. I have more wacky bracket ideas coming out. I have at least 4 more in my head right now. I'm either going to release them either tonight or tomorrow or sometime before the NCAA tournament starts. But just be on the lookout for that. They're going to be coming out very soon. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And be sure to check out my other bracket videos and also my other NCAA tournament videos that I uploaded onto my channel. So, till next time, guys, I will see you all later.